After months of speculation, it appears Toronto will be home to the first WNBA team outside the U.S. Multiple reports indicate Toronto's franchise will join the league in 2026. Larry Tannenbaum, the minority owner and chair of MLSE, will own it via his separate company, Kilmer Sports Group. They'll reportedly play out of the Coca-Cola Coliseum. There are currently 12 WNBA teams, and the league announced earlier this year that Golden State would be getting a team in 2025. For more on the WNBA expanding to Toronto, we are joined live by sports journalist and author Laura Robinson. Thanks for being with us today, Laura.
My pleasure.
Now, word of this team reportedly coming to Toronto, getting so much attention right now. What do you make of the response?
I think the response is fantastic. It's sort of been held in a bottle for a long time because so many people know that professional women's sport is the way to go, and there's a huge fan base. And now finally, the basketball players are going to join the hockey players.
What is driving this snowballing popularity surrounding women's professional sports right now?
Well, you know what? There's a long history, first of all, in women's basketball in Canada. You know, we have this incredible team called the Edmonton Grads that went from 1915 to 1940, won 95% of their games, including at the World Championships. Unfortunately, women's basketball wasn't allowed into the Olympics in those days. In fact, women's basketball didn't get into the Olympics until 1976. And that's when, you know, the great player Sylvia Sweeney for Canada played. And, you know, she took us to fourth place at the Olympics in 1984 in LA. You know, so what I mean is that there's a great history of women's basketball that people probably don't know a lot about, including the Toronto Montgomery Maids, who in 1948 actually displaced the Edmonton Grads as the Canadian champions. And so I think it's a long time coming, and everyone's extremely excited to see this level of basketball finally make it onto a professional court.
Why is Toronto a good home for a WNBA team?
Well, Toronto has a great history of basketball. As I said, you know, the Montgomery Maids, which were from Toronto in 1948, brought home the Canadian Championship trophy in those days. And there were great women's teams in the 40s and 50s. And so we have that base, but we also have a really important street basketball in Toronto, and we can see that at the level of play at the high school, even at the elementary school level. And when we saw that the Raptors came to Canada and came to Toronto, we saw this elevated level of play in boys basketball, especially at the high school level. And now what we're going to see is, I think, a similar elevation of play in girls basketball, high school basketball. And we already have a lot of women basketball players and women athletes playing in the NCAA. You know, they get scouted by American coaches. And we have a number of women playing in American League, in the WNBA and in European leagues. So now we have this opportunity to have those women and, I think, up and coming really great athletes play in Toronto.
It seems like there's so much to celebrate right now. You know, I'm thinking about U.S. college basketball, the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark. But I wonder what hurdles still remain for female pro athletes.
There are lots of hurdles for all female athletes. We know from the House of Commons Heritage Committee hearings and the Status of Women's Committee hearings that women athletes have faced terrible abusive obstacles. And as of this week, the Minister of Sport, Carla Qualtrough, announced, the Future of Sport Commission, and the Commissioner, Lise Maisonneuve, who's a former Chief Justice of Ontario. So now Canada has this opportunity to really address in a very serious manner the obstacles and environment that have been very dangerous to female athletes, and say, we're leaving that behind now. We're leaving all of the abuse behind. We're leaving the discrimination behind. And let's move forward, not just at the pro level, but at every level. Let's make sure that girls have equal ice time, equal court time, and are treated with the kind of respect and honor that boys don't even know they have.
We're almost out of time here, Laura. Real quick, when it comes to women's pro hockey, what are Toronto's chances of becoming the league's first ever champions?
I think we have a great chance. We beat Minnesota last night. Of course, every time you kind of lay your cards on the table, your opponents study you very carefully. So you can bet that Boston and Montreal are going through the tape right now of what we did with Minnesota, and we know that they had great goaltending. So both teams did actually, but I think we have a great chance, and I can't even imagine what Toronto's going to be like if we do win.
Oh, yeah, there is going to be some sort of celebration. Sports journalist and author Laura Robinson, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure.